Hello, everyone. Today, we have another remake on our hands. This time, looking at a small, lithe, early relative of crocodiles that lived about 230 million years ago. Let's talk about Hesperosuchus. In 1929, paleontologist E.C. Case was working at Ghost Ranch, New Mexico, excavating fossils from the famous Chinle Formation. He found a partial skeleton with a skull, which turned out to be something completely new. The animal had been previously identified as a relative of Stegosaurus, but it wasn't a dinosaur at all. It was a member of the Archosaur group, more specifically a very early crocodile relative. The animal was named Hesperosuchus agilis, or the agile western crocodile. Crocodilians are obviously still around today, but did you know they almost certainly would not exist if it wasn't for this little guy? Hesperosuchus is one of the earliest known members of a group called Crocodilomorpha. These animals were mostly medium-sized, facultatively bipedal carnivores that lived on land, unlike their crocodilian descendants that mostly rely on aquatic habitats. One of the first things that stands out when looking at Hesperosuchus is its size. At around 1 meter long, it was absolutely tiny compared to its larger relatives. The largest crocodilomorphs could reach lengths of over 6 meters. Now, for some context, a 1 meter long animal is about the size of an Australian shepherd dog. Not exactly huge. A lot of people think that dinosaurs were always giant monsters, but that really wasn't the case. The majority of species were actually much closer to the size of a chicken, and this was just another one of those animals. It also helps to remember that the Earth itself looked vastly different back then. Continents were joined together in a supercontinent called Pangaea, which meant there was only one large ocean called Panthalassa. Being a small animal probably wasn't that bad back then, as prey animals could hide in basically any body of water. Just imagine trying to find food in a forest today. It's difficult enough when every tree is like 20 feet tall. But if the trees were all 200 feet tall, it would be borderline impossible without being an eagle or a plane. But these animals likely exploited a niche similar to that of monitor lizards today, which are often less than a meter long and live alongside crocodiles in many parts of the world. Another feature that stands out about Hesperosuchus is its posture. Unlike modern crocodiles, which are quadrupedal, meaning they walk on 4 legs, Hesperosuchus was more similar to dinosaurs, birds, and many other terrestrial reptiles. It walked on 2 legs while also having the ability to use all 4 limbs for support. Essentially, it was facultatively bipedal, meaning that it didn't exclusively use 2 legs to get around, but it could do so when needed. This is clear when looking at its pelvis, which looks more like that of a bird or a dinosaur rather than a crocodile. The femur, or thigh bone, is also relatively thin and elongated, which is another trait that sets it apart from its later relatives. The most obvious thing that separates Hesperosuchus from true crocodiles is, of course, its teeth. As a general rule, mammals and crocodilians are the only major groups of vertebrates with teeth as adults. Birds don't have teeth, even though they are descended from dinosaurs, which absolutely did. Crocodilians also lack teeth as hatchlings, only developing them as they get older. Hesperosuchus, however, retained its teeth throughout its entire life. It had 17 teeth on each side of its upper jaw, which would have been used to snatch up prey and slice it into bite-sized chunks. Crocodilians, on the other hand, have lost all teeth as adults except for their front teeth, which form a sort of beak. They use this structure to catch fish, but it's too weak to effectively process anything else. So, what exactly did Hesperosuchus eat? Well, its stomach contents could vary depending on what was available, but it most likely relied on insects, amphibians, and small reptiles. There was also plenty of dinosaur meat to go around. Small ornithischians were incredibly common in the Chinle Formation and would have made for an easy meal. Maybe Hesperosuchus was ambushed by a passing Dilophosaurus. The Chinle Formation is especially exciting because of the sheer abundance of fossils. It's been called the Valley of the Ghosts by locals due to the dozens of skeletons that can be found scattered around the area. Paleontologists were excited to study these fossils because they represented a previously unknown part of the fossil record. Basically, no rocks of this age existed in the United States before this discovery. It turns out that the area had once been a vast swamp with an abundance of life. The formation itself gets its name from the Chusca Mountains, where most of the fossils were originally found. But unfortunately, the story doesn't end there. Shortly after the fossils were discovered, a series of floods caused by heavy rains washed away many of the dig sites. Hundreds of specimens were lost forever. Of course, others were recovered, but this goes to show how fragile fossils are and how easily they can be destroyed. So we should cherish the ones we do have. The geological age of the Chinle Formation has been heavily debated over the years, with estimates ranging from 247 to 228 million years old. Most researchers agree that Hesperosuchus lived somewhere near the top of this range about 230 million years ago. This places it firmly in the late Triassic Period, right before the largest mass extinction in history. This event killed off over 75% of all species and left Earth somewhat empty for the dinosaurs to take over. Hesperosuchus, however, was not related to the dinosaurs. Instead, it belonged to a group of animals that were more like lizards. These are called Archosauria, which split into two main branches. One group were the crocodilians, and the other was the dinosaurs. The term archosaur is sometimes used interchangeably with dinosaur, but they are not the same thing. Dinosaurs are literally just one type of archosaur. To make matters even more confusing, the name archosaur is technically a synonym for the group that includes crocodilians and birds. But I digress. Returning to Hesperosuchus, it was one of the last large terrestrial crocodilians. Before this, animals like carnifex were the apex predators across Pangaea. They were massive, powerful creatures, but they were terrible swimmers. This was not an issue as they spent most of their time on land, but it left them vulnerable to smaller, faster predators that could ambush them in shallow water. Over time, this led to the evolution of smaller, more maneuverable crocodilians. The largest example of this group is the 4-meter-long Notosuchus, which had short legs and a long body ideal for hunting in water. The ancestors of modern crocodilians evolved from animals like this, which led to a whole host of new forms. In the Jurassic period onwards, these included the ancestors of the true crocodilians, gavials, false gharials, and the iconic phytosaurs. When comparing the skull of Hesperosuchus to later crocodilomorphs, we see a significant difference in the shape of the teeth. As mentioned earlier, adult crocodiles have largely lost their teeth, replacing them with a narrow band of solid bone. This allows them to generate immense bite forces when clamping down on prey. Hesperosuchus, however, had thinner teeth adapted for slicing, not crushing. It was able to use its teeth as weapons to cut up prey rather than using its jaws like modern crocodiles. This suggests that Hesperosuchus took advantage of a different ecological opportunity. Its skull shows a mosaic of primitive and derived features. Some of these traits were inherited from its ancestors, whereas others helped set it apart from the dinosaurs. For example, the temporal fenestrae, or holes, behind the eyes were present in early archosaurs but absent in dinosaurs. This is a feature that Hesperosuchus shares with later crocodilians. However, it also retained the long, slender snout of its ancestors. While this was useful for catching slippery prey, it would not have been great for crushing bones. It seems that Hesperosuchus was well suited for life on land thanks to its teeth and posture, but was likely still capable of hunting in water if needed. It essentially represented an important milestone in the evolution of crocodilomorphs, showing the transition from large terrestrial predators such as carnifex to the smaller quadrupeds such as Protosuchus that gave rise to all the crocodilomorph groups in the Jurassic period onwards, including the ancestors of the true crocodilians. So, what should we talk about next? Please let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more. As always, I will see you next time.